Today I will read Curious George Saves His Pennies by Margret and H.A. and give you some fun ways to practice waiting and making decisions between spending or saving money. I'm Katie Gellings from the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension, and welcome to UW Money as You Grow book read. In today's book, Curious George wants to buy a toy train at the local toy store. The man with the yellow hat suggests that George save money for the train. When George reaches his goal, he loses all his money on the way to the toy store. After the book, we'll talk about some activities you can try at home from the parent guide from UW-Madison Division of Extension and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You can also find out more about Money as You Grow bookshelf at the website link I'll share at the end of this video. So let's get started. Curious George Saves His Pennies. George was a good little monkey and always very curious, especially when he was in Tammy's toy store. There were so many things to wonder about: pogo sticks and skateboards, snow globes and kaleidoscopes, and even finger traps. But George's favorite thing to do in the toy store was play at the train table. Today there was a new train. Its wood was painted bright red and it had a real working whistle. George held it up to show his friend, the man with the yellow hat. "Not today," his friend said. "We're looking for a birthday present for Noah, remember? He's turning 5. What do you think of this?" George helped his friend pick out a green and yellow hula hoop. While Tammy, the shopkeeper, wrapped the present for the birthday party, George wandered back to the train table. "I have a suggestion, George," said the man as he carried the gift over. "Why don't you buy the new train yourself? The tag says $5. I'm sure you can save the money for it." George liked this suggestion so much that he was only a little sorry to put the train back down. George had a good time at the birthday party. Noah let everyone have a turn at the hula hoop. It was harder than it looked. As soon as George got home that afternoon, he took his piggy bank down from his dresser. He opened the small plug at the bottom and shook. Out tumbled a nickel. George ran to show the coin to his friend. "You have 5 cents, the man said. "I'll give you your allowance early this week. Don't spend it on candy. You have to save it up." The man gave George 2 quarters. "Here is 50 cents, he said. "Now you have 55 cents. You only have $4.45 left to save." George wasn't quite sure how much money that was, but it sounded like a lot. George dreamed about his red train that night. He was riding it through a forest of trees. He tugged on the whistle again and again so that no one could miss such a shiny red engine. In the morning, George decided he would have to find a way to earn money faster. What if someone else were to buy the red train at the toy store before he could? He had an idea. George found 5 pennies and a dime in the sofa cushions. He found a nickel under his bed. His piggy bank jingled nicely that evening. He had 75 cents saved. 1 more quarter and he would have $1. The next morning, George had another idea. He would get a job. Lucky for George, his neighbor, Mr. Reddy, needed help raking leaves. George worked all morning long, gathering armfuls of red, brown, and gold leaves to add to a growing pile in the center of the yard. Mr. Reddy brought out lemonade for the 2 to share. While his neighbor rested on the sun porch swing, George climbed a tree. The pile of leaves looked tempting from above. George wondered what would happen if... Before he finished wondering, he had swung out of the branches and right into the center of the pile. The leaves crunched and crumbled and swished and swirled. What an adventure! What hard work it was raking the leaves back up. But at the end of the day, Mr. Reddy paid him $2. George had $2.75 saved. That was almost $3. George spent many days doing odd jobs. He washed windows, he distributed flyers, he delivered flowers, he did dishes. At the end of the week, George finally had $5. "I'm proud of you, George," said the man with the yellow hat. "You saved all that money by yourself. You've sure earned that train." The change clinked merrily in the piggy bank as George set off for the toy store. The autumn day was bright and clear and not very cold. George walked by the park. The neighborhood children were playing with a windsock. Suddenly it got stuck in a tree. They needed George's help. George carefully set his piggy bank down on a nearby park bench where he could keep an eye on it, because little monkeys sometimes forget. And as George began to play with the children, he forgot to check that his bank was still there. As the afternoon wore on, his friends went home to have dinner. George rushed to the park bench where he had left his piggy bank. The toy store might be closing soon, but his bank was gone. Maybe George had the wrong bench. There were many in the park after all, but he was disappointed each time he ran up to another empty bench. George walked home sadly. He wondered how long it would take him to save $5 again. As George passed the toy store, he happened to look through the window. He couldn't believe his eyes. A little girl was holding his piggy bank. George rushed into the toy store just as the girl's mother was saying, "We found this across the street and waited for its owner, but it's getting late. We saw that it has the name of your store on the bottom. Can you keep it in case someone comes to claim it?" George jumped up and down on the counter. "Why, George," Tammy said, is this bank yours? You're lucky Hannah and her mother found it." Hugging his piggy bank tightly, George rushed over to the train section. He located the shiny red engine right away. As he carried it to the counter, the little girl looked at his train shyly. George realized he had not said thank you to her for keeping his savings safe. He looked at his train. He looked at his piggy bank. He looked at Hannah. Good deeds deserve to be rewarded, he decided. George set the train down. He upended his piggy bank on the counter and began to sort dollars and coins. George and Hannah walked out of the toy store that day, each carrying a train. George's small engine was not red, but it was shiny and blue, and he had paid for it all by himself. Best of all, he had a new friend who loved to play with trains almost as much as he did. That was a great story. Now let's talk about it. There are two kinds of sharing. Something shared that doesn't have to be returned or paid for as a gift. Something borrowed or lent must be returned. At the birthday party, Noah let all his friends play with his new hula hoop. Do you ever share your toys with others? Sometimes we can't have what we want right away and need to wait. Choosing not to spend money now lets us save for something big that we really want. Waiting for something we want is hard to do, and in the story, George had to wait to buy the train until he had enough money. Many times there are different ways to use money. Taking time to ask questions, learn about different choices, and compare what's good and bad about each option helps you reach good decisions. In the story, George had a decision to make about buying the train he wanted or thanking Hannah for keeping his bank safe. Here's some fun activities you can do with an adult to practice waiting. Plant some seeds in a cup or in a garden and wait for them to grow. Ask an adult to help you plan a special trip to the park or another place. You can make a paper chain using scrap paper, a scissors, and glue or tape. The paper chain will have the number of links for each day until the special event happens. Every day, tear off one link, and when you're down to the last link, your special trip is here. For these and other ways to learn about and discuss money at home, check out the parent guide for this and other Money as You Grow books. Thanks, and we hope you'll join us next time for another UW Money as You Grow book read.